have three great speakers today. We're going to start with Tony. He's going to talk about his personal story on taking risks. Then Margaret Armstrong, who's a faculty at the OB department. I believe a lot of you had her as a professor, is going to talk about her research on facing the group, the effects of facial structure on group hierarchy, conflict, and performance, which we got a little teaser, I think, some of the people in her class last term, which was really great. And then Niraj, who's an MBA 2014, is going to talk about his experience in terms of his journey from investment banking to impact investment. So the format is about 15 minutes of a presentation and then 5 minutes of Q&A. And with that, yeah, I'll turn it to Tony.
Do you have the clicker thing?
No? I actually don't.
That's fine. All right.
Here you go.
Yeah. Well, I first want to thank everyone for being here today. I had a lot of fun doing this, building the slides, looking into my past, and I hope you guys have some fun looking at the presentations. So before I start, I guess I want to show a quote real quick. So life is either a daring adventure or nothing at all. And I know at this time in our career, we're all making a lot of decisions. We're looking at a lot of choices in terms of getting an internship, going to banking, consulting. Whichever path you take, right, we're at that point where we're exploring. So I think right now there's no better time to take a risk. When I look at where I am today, and I actually like to kind of go back a little bit to see how I got here. And so I'm here now, right? What do I do next, right? So a little bit of wisdom from my mother. Like, whenever you don't know what to do, I always remember where you came from. So I guess the best place to start is really from the beginning. So my childhood, I actually, some of you guys don't know this, but I actually made a lot of wrong turns. When I was in middle school, I pretty much failed all my classes. When I was 13, it was the first time I was arrested. Yeah, so I switched school 2 times, and mostly because I did some pretty bad things. And most of the kids I grew up with, actually, they end up choosing very interesting careers themselves. Most of them didn't go to college. One guy he overdosed on something. And a few of them went to end up in jail, and one person who was very smart, but eventually went to jail for insider trading. But so it was really a time for awakening. So it was the first semester of high school. I was I was very rebellious. I didn't behave very well. So I did something, and it got me suspended for 2 weeks. So for those 2 weeks, I didn't go to class and ended up being home. And it was the first time I really looked at my parents and see what they were doing while I was away at school. And I noticed something very interesting. So my mother at the time, she woke up way earlier than I did. And she would wake up early in the morning, she would cook us breakfast, then she would go to work. And she'd come back really late in the evening, and she would continue to teach class. So me and my family, we're first-generation Americans. So I watched them struggle a lot to really provide for me and my twin brother. So after seeing that, I thought that I didn't want to disappoint them, and I really want to try at least a little bit. Get into college, right, and meet some good people. So it turned out okay. I mean, I actually ended up graduating college with nearly perfect GPA. I took 12 AP classes. I don't know if you guys know what that is, but it's like college course that you take in high school. And I entered college as a third-year student, so I ended up saving 2 years of time. So I got into college. But what now? Should I do engineering? Should I go into business, be a banker, or consulting? Or actually, at that time, I didn't really know what any of those meant. So I was in the engineering school first. Business school first. Then in the first semester, I switched to engineering because I wanted to do something more entrepreneurial. I wanted to do a little bit more technical stuff. And I had an idea. So at the time, in the U.S., books are very expensive. So I was spending thousands of dollars each semester on textbooks. And I thought, why not just build a platform that allows students to trade books with each other? It saves a lot of money each term. So I was kind of poor at the time. I know building a platform like this takes a lot of people, a lot of resources. And I didn't really have the money to hire anyone. So I went to the school and negotiated for a class. I said, hey, let me open a class, and I'll call it business research. And, I'll make sure that, we'll get some really bright students in, and we'll give them a real-life working experience. Because at that time, as students, we didn't have any work experience. We were also looking for experience to help us get internships, right? So if you have something to say on your resume, chances are you probably have a leg up over the other students. So through this program that I negotiated with the school, we were able to get some really bright people into the class. I was able to find a professor, a first-year professor, that taught engine programming, and she sponsored our class. So for this entire class, EECS 499, she actually only showed up twice. One for the midterm and one for the final. Midterm, final. We didn't take a test or anything, but she ended up getting paid a lot for teaching extra class. So it was really a win-win situation for all. I got a lot of students working on my project for free. The school opened up a new class teaching students how to do business. We got a professor who was very well paid. And all my students end up getting A+. Right? So, during that year of free resources, that's when I went to pursue VC, because I know this is not going to last. I know at some point the school is going to realize what I'm doing, and at some point they're gonna cut us off. So a year later, school started something called the Center for Entrepreneurship at the engineering school, and where they're going to help more startups like this, but in a more structured way, right? A more formal way. But before that, I went to pursue venture capital, and we got some money, and I was able to partner with Amazon.com to build this platform. We were super lean. Actually, after our seed funding, we didn't really look for any other sources of funding, because all the money that we got, we reinvested into the firm, and most of our employees were students, so they didn't really demand a lot in compensation. But the entrepreneurship road is full of puddles. There's always mistakes. There's always things that go wrong. So I think this was in 2007, where we went to Silicon Valley for our conference. It was hosted by Google, and we presented our idea. And within 6 months, Facebook introduced Marketplace. I'm not going to say anything about Facebook. I don't know if they learned something from us, or they. There's a lot of similarities. So, we had a huge problem in demand, because when Facebook came out, they already had everyone on their platform. So we saw a huge drop in user base, and we saw a huge drop in revenue. At that time, we also had a lot of internal struggles. Because I guess when I was young and immature, I was kind of selfish. When I built the company, I thought of co-founders as me and my twin brother. And I took majority of the share. I had 34% of the company. My brother had 33%. And we had 5 other very smart individuals we got through the class. And we onboarded them. We gave them a little bit of equity incentive as well. So we gave them 1.5% per person. I had 34%, right? So you see there's a huge imbalance. So, after a year when the class ended, and these guys were full-time, and they realized it really quickly that, hey Tony, this is really not fair. We're all doing the same thing. We're classmates. You're programming, I'm programming. You're approaching customers, I'm approaching customers. Why is your shares like multiple times more than mine? And there were 5 of them that were kind of coming to us with this problem, right? So, and also we had some pressure from investors to sell, because we had a drop in demand, and they're kind of in the mood of like cut down loss, than trying to like gain from this deal. So, a little disruption. I graduated. The guy on the left, I don't know if you can see him, Barack Obama, the president of United States. He spoke at our graduation, and my family over here. But the next 6 months after graduation was actually probably one of the most painful time of my life. I suffered a huge depression. So at that time, the company was going really bad, right? We were forced to sell. So I did sell the company, and we sold it very little. It wasn't nearly as much that we hoped for. And before we sold the company, my my co-founders, not my brother, but the other 5, they negotiated with VC to increase their share. So my share was diluted. Each of them ended up getting about 7.5, and my 34% was actually a lot less than what it was before. So when we sold the company, I didn't really get too much out of it. And did I want to sell the company? Absolutely not. I mean, it was 2 years where I put a lot of my effort, a lot of my energy into it, and I wanted to grow, right? I wanted to compete against Facebook Marketplace. I wanted to grow to something more valuable than just the technology, right? I want to bring people into it. And so I had a lot of questions. I remember like waking up 3 a.m. with like tears in my eyes, thinking like, what the hell happened? Like, I was on top of my game. You know, I had people, I had free resources, I had so many support, but what the hell happened? And also at that time, my girlfriend left me. So. Yeah, so like any 21-year-old would do, I resorted to some retail therapy. So you know how when you suddenly made a bit of money and you think that, hey, I'm gonna like dedicate 5% to just blow it away on some toys, luxury goods. I didn't have that feeling. I blew a lot more than 5%. New car, some trips to Vegas, some parties, more parties, Vegas, some beach trips, another car that I can actually drive, and a house. So I pretty much blew all my earnings, but I did end up with something good. So in the end, I was able to pay off all my loans. In the U.S., that's a shitload of loans, and I was able to get a house for my parents. So I guess it wasn't too bad, right? So what's next, right? 6 months after graduation, I looked into Silicon Valley. I thought that's probably where I would start again. Build something again. So I joined a very early stage consulting company called PRTM, and actually within 8 months I had my second exit. So PRTM was sold to PwC. As part of the merger contract, I had to stay there for about 2 years, and during that time I had a chance to really focus a lot of my practice in early stage companies, because that's what I'm really passionate about, like startups. So I worked with Beats by Dre. I was, I think, the 10th person there, and Beats right now is over $1 billion in revenue. And Red, they shot a lot of the movies in theaters today. Spider-Man, The Hobbit, like a lot of those movies are shot by Red cameras. In 2013, I came to LBS. In Silicon Valley, I realized that I started to enter a zone of comfort. I think that I didn't really like comfort, because I feel like the more I'm used to an environment, the less I have the will to fight, to continue to do new things. So I thought, why not come out of my bubble and come to LBS for a little bit? So in the last few years, I learned a few things. Well, what's the point of all this if I didn't get anything, if I didn't learn anything, right? So there's really 3 things: humility, building a perfect plan, and being lucky. Right? So humility, no matter how good you think you are, there's always someone better. The people that I had on my projects, the people I built Tradeversity with, they're way better than me. They're people that are programming geniuses. I mean, they can come to any keyboard and just start typing shit up, just start creating stuff, creating apps, which I didn't have that capability. This is exactly why you need partners, you need teachers, and you need friends. So at LBS right now, I'm working on a new startup project, and with some very talented people. And I'm honestly, these two, in many aspects, are way better than me. In programming, in strategy, in a lot of stuff that we're doing right now. So, building a perfect plan. Yeah, so I built this monster probably a couple of years ago. At that time, I thought it was the outline of my life. I thought it was, start from the beginning, 3 tracks: community, extracurricular, professional. I thought I had it all laid out. But soon, I actually didn't come back to this until a few days ago when I was preparing for this presentation. I was saying that, I built this plan 2 years. Why did I not come back to it? So what I really learned is that in a perfect plan doesn't mean that you win all the time, right? In the past, if you asked me what's a perfect plan, I would say I win all the time. I get what I want. I get all my dreams. But now I have a little bit different perspective. So a perfect plan is, in my mind, it's something that's more than just winning. sometimes you have to lose. You don't get better by winning all the time. You get better when you lose. You look at yourself more when you lose. So if I can get better every day by going through some tough times, then that is all part of a perfect plan. So the last thing is about being lucky. So in my mind, or from my personal learnings, I think lucky, this word is totally bullshit. Like, I don't really believe in luck. I think luck is a lot of hard work, right? And I think luck, it's most people treat luck as some simple statistic, right? Today I applied to Goldman Sachs, I have 1 in 5 chance of getting in. I applied to McKinsey, 1 in 4 chance. So if world were that simple, then why don't you just apply 5 times, apply 4 times? One of those times you're going to get in, right? So being luck looks like a lot of repetitive, a lot of hard work, right? So I'd like to end with a quote from Mark Cuban. So the point about this is that it doesn't matter how many times you fail. It doesn't matter how many times you almost got it right, because no one's going to care, right? Neither should you, right? So all you have to do is learn from the things you did and those around you, because all that matters in business is to get it right once. Then everybody else can tell you how lucky you are. So, thank you.
So I don't know if anybody has any questions or yeah, 2 or 3 minutes, I think. Easy.
Yeah, go ahead.
I have a question. I can't really hear more personal, but so having all your background in entrepreneurship, you also do something here. Why are you applying now to all these corporates, Goldman Sachs? Doesn't fit you very well.
I mean, like, we're all at a point where we're making a lot of choices, and the part of taking risk, in my mind, is not necessarily just to pick one thing and stick with it. A lot of taking risk is about hedging. It's about kind of exploring the other aspects a bit. I mean, do I really have passion for banking? I don't know, probably not. I mean, but I think it's probably worth something. I can probably learn something by trying it out and see how it goes. Right. So, you asked me what's my plan. I don't know. I mean, that plot, that big graph I showed you guys, I thought that was it, but I mean, I didn't look at it for 2 years. So you can imagine what a perfect plan is. Any other?
Did you think your plan helped you?
I think at the moment it did. Some of those things, like, under construction, like right here, going to MBA, found a tech startup, trial finance. So some of that stuff is kind of going in that direction. Grow a tech startup, sell it, or become a consultant, write a book. I mean, a lot that stuff is like kind of in the process. I mean, I don't know if I'm going to follow it exactly. I don't know which one comes first. I don't know if I ever get to do some of these things. But, I mean, the point of this slide was so that you can build something so pretty and just toss it away. Because you're not going to follow it.
I have a question. Do you regret anything that you did or did not do?
Yeah. Well, one of my biggest learning is it is being humble. So when I built my first project, I think I was way too over my head. I mean, the shares were completely just outrageous. 34%, 1.5%. I mean, that just didn't make sense. And looking back at it, I thought it was foolish. I was actually surprised that the people I worked with didn't come to me sooner to raise about this problem. And but it's a good learning opportunity. I mean, in the end, I didn't really get too much out of it, the transaction at all. But it was more about learning than the money part. So.
Right. Thanks. Awesome. So now we have Margaret Armstrong and faculty from Organizational Behavior is going to talk about her research in facing the group. And again, we're trying to highlight with these sort of somebody tells a personal story, somebody talks about an idea or research that they're doing, and then about work experience. So without ado.
Yeah, thank you. Do I need this for that? Or
yeah, it'd be good if you.
Okay.
Thanks.
So thank you so much for inviting me to come. It's so nice to be here. First of all, it's really nice to see a lot of familiar faces from GLAM and whatnot. But it's really, I think, a wonderful thing that you guys are doing, trying to create a culture, a community where we can talk about what's important to us and our experiences. And it's really nice to get to talk about my research because it's something that's really important to me. And so the fact that you guys actually are interested and want to hear more about it is a huge pleasure. So thank you for having me. So what I want to talk about today is about facing the group, about facial structure in groups. So some of you who took my course in the fall know that I study top management teams. And when studying them, it's very hard for someone like myself, for academics, to actually really get into the psyche of these leaders. So we end up having to use these various proxies for their cognitive, the way they think, their values, their personality, and one of those is facial structure. So we did some research on that, and that got us interested in the power of facial appearance in influencing behavior. And it sounds kind of crazy, but actually it's really kind of significant, the effects. So that's what I want to talk about today. I want to start by thinking about hierarchy formation in many species. So when we look at different types of animals, what we found is that size and physical appearance matters quite a bit with animals, right? So dolphins, size matters. With antelopes, the length of the antlers. The capuchin monkey, who looks very grumpy in this photograph, but actually the facial structure of these monkeys matters, such that when it's wider-faced capuchin monkeys rise to the top of the hierarchy in comparison to narrower-faced. And even this adorable little marmoset pygmy creature actually is so tiny, and yet size matters within that species. The larger these pygmy marmosets, the more likely they are to rise in the dominance hierarchy. And so my colleagues and I were interested in this day and age, do these things still matter with humans? So in sort of self-managed, decentralized teams, do we see this size, and in particular related to the face, does that influence hierarchy formation? So that's the question I want to think about today, and then think about, well, what are the consequences of this hierarchy based on facial appearance? So in thinking about what determines social hierarchies, I first just want to start with a definition. So social hierarchies are about ranking individuals based on something that's socially valued, something that we value. And this could be many different things. Right? So, and the research shows many different things form hierarchies. So from the situation, right, it depends on where I sit at the table as to where I am going to be in a hierarchy. So where should I sit at the table if I want to be at the top? Oh, that actually is a big clue. Sit at the top, right? So if I want to be the one in charge, this is a simple thing for you to do next time you are in a room with a table. Just sit at the top of the table. You're more likely to be conferred higher status. Personality. So we talked about this in the fall, but extroversion is found to be linked to rising in dominance hierarchies. So there's a study of fraternities in the United States, and fraternity brothers who were more extroverted, more dominant, are more likely to rise to the top. Not only personality, but also different demographic characteristics. So men are more likely to rise to the top of a hierarchy than are women. Whites are more likely to rise to the top of a hierarchy than are non-whites. And so this is an important time to mention that when I'm talking about hierarchy formation and what leads to someone coming to the top, it's clearly not based on skill alone, necessarily, right? I mean, whites, men are not necessarily the most skilled, but what's important here is that they represent a prototype in our mind of what we imagine a leader looks like. And that has powerful implications as to who rises to the top. So then now there's more recent research that's actually looking at subjective facial appearance and how that influences dominance hierarchies. So here's a few examples. So this guy, Armstrong, he's the CEO of AOL, and he is deemed one of the most attractive CEOs out there. And there's research that shows that more attractive individuals are more likely to rise to the top in a hierarchy. All right, so again, going back to this fraternity study, fraternity brothers who were more attractive were more likely to be listened to, more likely that their decisions would go through as to what was actually going to happen in the group, more likely to become a leader. not only are they more likely to the rise to the top, but there's recent research that just came out a few weeks ago that shows there's this sort of beauty premium that happens with CEOs of publicly traded companies, that their stock price actually goes up when they come on TV and give some sort of forecast as to what's going to happen. The stock price actually bounces up when they're more attractive. It's crazy. Black male CEOs in the U.S. It's very hard for black males to rise to the top in the U.S. Recent research done by Livingston and Pierce found, though, that those black male CEOs who were able to rise to the top had this more baby-faced feature, so large eyes. And the thinking is that these individuals are able to kind of go against stereotypes of black males in the U.S. as threatening, because they have this baby face, they seem sort of more benign. And so therefore they actually are able to rise to the top, get paid more. This study is interesting. This is of politicians. So this one was a study that found that these researchers could predict with 70% accuracy who would win an election, just based on participants looking at the photos and deciding who should win. So who do you think should win here? This guy or this guy? This guy?
Yeah.
That's who won, Feingold. So something about his face made people feel like he should win, and then he did win. So I think that it suggests there's something powerful going on. It may be very superficial, but even if it is superficial, something powerful is happening as a consequence of us looking at these people and making flash judgments about who they are. This final study was of cadets at West Point, and what they found was that those who were perceived as more dominant were more likely to rise further up in the ranks. So these are very interesting studies, but my colleagues and I felt that they're about subjective perceptions, and we don't really know what it is about these faces. Okay, maybe the larger eyes and the baby face, but we're not really sure exactly what it is that is causing these people to rise to the top or not. And so we were interested in trying to find an objective measure that could really pinpoint what's happening. And so the facial width to height ratio, which is a big mouthful, but I'm just going to call it wider faces to be simpler, is an objective measure that has various biological and behavioral outcomes, and has been found. I've talked about it before, but there's a number of links in how this facial width to height ratio relates to a number of different outcomes. But basically, it's about this width to the height of the face, and here's just an example of going from narrower to wider faced. Now, it's a sexually dimorphic trait, which means that it's more, there's larger variation with men having larger ratios than women, and also that the consequences are more profound for men than they are for women. And so from this point forward to till the end of the talk, I'm just going to focus on men, but I'll come back to women at the end. So what's been done on this is that it's found that there are perceptions that people with wider faces, men with wider faces, are more aggressive, they're more dominant. They also have more of a sense of power. They have more of a desire to protect their group. And so our argument is very simple, is that these individuals who have wider faces are going to be perceived as the prototype of what we think of as a leader. And that is then therefore going to lead them to rise to the top within a group that's self-managed, more so than those that have narrower faces. Okay? So we did a number of studies to test this hypothesis. I'm just going to run through them very quickly. The first was just a basic online study where we asked participants, these photos were actually side by side, we asked them, look at these two photos of these men and choose who you think is more likely to be the leader and who should be the subordinate. And what we found was, regardless of what order we put the photographs in, we used these two faces, but we adjusted with the computer the width of their face, whatever combination we tried, the person who had the wider face was consistently ranked more likely to be the leader than the individual who had the narrower face. We then looked at NBA teams. This is not you guys, okay? But it was done at LBS, and it was a few years ago. So what we had were first-year MBAs who were in study groups, and they were asked to to do the 360 that you guys all had outside, your external 360. We did an internal 360, where the students all rated one another in terms of leadership abilities. And what we found was that that male individual who had the widest face was deemed to be the most leader-like in the group. Okay? So again, we find the same idea that this individual is emerging as a leader. Now, again, I'm not arguing here that this person actually is a better leader. It's just we're perceiving that this individual is a better leader. Okay, so finally we looked at it in publicly traded firms. And what we found was we were looking at CEO dismissals. So the CEO is let go because of poor performance or because of fraudulent activities. Who do they hire as a replacement? That was our question. What we found is that when a company had poor performance and was rehiring someone or hiring someone because of poor performance, they were more likely to hire someone with a wider face. Okay, so that's consistent with what we've been arguing. But what was interesting was that we found that when the company was hiring someone because of fraudulent activity, because they had to restate earnings, it's actually the opposite effect. So what we find here is that they actually prefer the CEO who has the narrow face. They're more likely to hire the CEO who has a narrower face. Not only that, but this actual graph is actually about the analyst forecasts. And what we find is this sort of consistent result here is that the analyst forecasts, as well as the media, are much more positive after poor performance. You hire the CEO who has the wider face. But if you've engaged in fraudulent activity, people are much happier if you hire someone who has a narrower face. Now, why is that? So individuals who have narrower faces are perceived as more trustworthy than individuals who with wider faces. So what this suggests is there's some complexity here with these results. There always is. And that generally what we're finding is that people see people with wider faces, men with wider faces, as more leader-like. However, there are certain conditions when, in fact, individuals with narrow faces do better. So that's the good news, is that there's a place for all of us, right? Okay, so this was our first question, was do people with wider faces rise to the top? And our answer at this point is it looks as though they do. We wanted to then think about what the consequence was. So there's a couple consequences we're thinking about. The first is how it affects group performance in these self-managed MBA teams. What we found, and again, this isn't you guys, but what we found is that when there was dispersion, variation in terms of facial structure within a group, that actually there was less conflict in terms of coordination and better performance than when there was a bunch of men who actually had similar facial structures. So our idea, we weren't able to really dig into this, but our thought is that when a team has individuals who have a similar kind of status in terms of their facial structure, there may be more jockeying for power than in teams where there's a clear individual who has a wider face. Now, again, this all seems kind of preposterous, but I want to come back to this basic theory in leadership of prototypes and leader categorization, where we come into a room and we don't have a lot of information of the people around us. So we have to go on the basics of physical who's in the room with us. So we start looking at gender, we start looking at ethnicity, we start looking at facial appearance. These factors all contribute to our assessment of a leader. So it's powerful. But it's not all good necessarily. So self-fulfilling prophecy. This is the second kind of mechanism we want to understand, is whether or not individuals with a wider face are treated differently, and that leads to their subsequent behavior. Okay, so self-fulfilling prophecy. This is came from a sociologist, Robert Merton, in the 1940s, which is a false definition of the situation, evoking a new behavior which makes the originally false conception come true. What does that mean? That sounds like gibberish. What it means is my evaluations of you cause you to act that way. So if I say half this class, sorry, you guys are dumb, half this class, you guys are smart. At the end of the term, what happens? You guys are dumb and you guys are smart. You live up to the expectation that I have of you. So we wanted to see if the same thing happened with facial structure. Okay, and just first, before I talk about facial structure, just an example of self-fulfilling prophecy when we're talking about facial appearance. there was a study that was done basically on honest faces. And it took little boys, pictures of little boys, and those that had more honest-looking faces, like this cute little baby, later on in life were actually rated as being more honest individuals. Now that seems crazy. But if you think about it, this individual goes through life being treated in a way that everyone trusts him, everyone treats him well, because he looks so trustworthy. He could never harm a fly. He could never do anything wrong. Whereas an individual who looks less trustworthy, people are always accusing them of something. People are always questioning them. And that then leads them to get defensive. That leads them to then, screw it, I'm going to be less honest. People assume that's what I'm going to do. That's what I'm going to do. So you can see how it actually happens. Again, scary, but it happens. You can see it also with gender. Okay, so what we did was we looked at relationships between dyads, between two individuals. So this is a different context than groups that are interdependent. This can lead to a lot more competition. So what we did was we had an individual participant look at, they were going to play a resource allocation game. And we had them look at the individual that they were going to play a game with. And they were either shown someone who had a wider face or someone who had a narrower face. And then they were asked first, how do you think this individual that you're going to play against, how are they going to behave? They were then asked, okay, how are you planning on behaving? We then, in a later study, tested how that individual, this wider or narrow-faced individual, actually would behave. It's a bit complicated, but here's what happened. When we saw a person with a wider face, participants assumed this guy's going to be competitive. I know he's going to be competitive. And so then we responded in kind. I better be more competitive because this guy is going to be a jerk. Right? So I'm more competitive. And that subsequently leads this guy, who may be a totally benign, nice guy, to all of a sudden be more competitive because I'm just responding to your more competitive behavior. Now all of a sudden I'm the competitive, more aggressive guy. It was the opposite effect with those narrower faces. So here we're seeing how simply just by looking at someone, we can then lead to behavior of them being more aggressive and competitive. And over the course of a lifetime, you can see that these behaviors actually become manifested within this individual and can have quite powerful effects. Okay, so I said I would come back to women. So are men always selected to be the leader over women? The answer is a lot of the time. Most of the time, unfortunately. I mean, sorry for some of us. But not always. So one of the reasons why men are often selected is because they're this prototype that men are more leader-like. They also tend to be incredibly overconfident about their past performance compared to women. So they're willing to kind of advertise and come across with their body that they know the right way forward. So they're often chosen, but not always. What research finds in terms of facial appearance is that people in a competitive environment, we want a more masculine face to lead us. In a more cooperative environment, people typically choose a more feminine face to lead them. So not all contexts. Again, it comes back to this point about generally we find wider faces are associated with leadership, but the context really matters. Okay, not only that, but while I've been focusing on these dominance hierarchies within men, we also should note that there are, of course, dominance hierarchies within women. And a good example are chickens and the pecking order, right? So the pecking order is kind of one of the first kind of terms in which we thought about the dominance hierarchy, and that's really about female chickens and how they get into this pecking situation to determine who is the most dominant female chicken. And clearly that also can happen with humans, and that's something that we're starting to explore as well. So not just looking at dominance hierarchies within men, but also within women to understand when is it and what attributes lead women to rise to the top. Okay, so that's actually pretty much it for me. Just in conclusion, what I want to say is that looks matter. We grow up thinking, no, looks don't matter, it's about what's on the inside. But it's true, looks do matter. But not necessarily because they should matter. They matter because we have prototypes, we have stereotypes in our mind of what a leader looks like. And when we see it and we don't have a lot of information, then we just assume, oh, there's the leader. And then that just paves the way for this individual to take the reins and actually step up to the plate and become the leader. So looks matter because we have a prototype of what a leader looks like, and because our reactions to that person causes their subsequent behavior. So we can sort of judge a book by a cover, but what I want us to do is to try and dig deeper. And remember that body language and situational factors like where I sit at the table matter as well. So generally, what we should be doing when we come into a room is communicating confidence, right? And that we know what we're doing, assertiveness. However, when there's a negative event, such as transgression, there's fraudulent activity, then we want to make sure we communicate trustworthiness. Definitely, the implication of this research is not to get surgery and try and widen your face. So that is sort of one area of my research in a very quick nutshell. If you guys have questions, then I would love to hear them. Yeah.
I was wondering if there's been any studies that showed correlation between the width of your face and something like testosterone or something like
Yeah.
that.
Okay. So that's a really good question. So yes, there has been some link in adolescence to increased testosterone and wider faces. So I think that there are basically two reasons why facial structure has an impact. One reason is because it's biological. There are behaviors that occur. The individual generally, because they have higher levels of testosterone, are more aggressive, right? But there's also this social cognitive perspective that's suggesting that I'm internalizing as an observer that you are an aggressive person, so then I treat you, I defer to you, or I compete with you, and then I then lead to that subsequent behavior. So it's a two-way, very complicated situation. Yeah. That's absolutely right. Yeah.
Have you shown these results to any companies or executives, and if so, what was their reaction?
Yeah, I mean, well, this research has gotten a lot of media attention, and certainly a lot of people, I think, misinterpret it and think, like some of the headlines are about, fatter faces or about, this very kind of superficial perspective. Or some people actually take offense and think that we are the people kind of making these judgments, when in fact we're just describing and noting this is what actually is happening. And I don't necessarily agree with it, but I think it's quite profound, and they're not spurious correlations because we keep finding them time and time again. So I think there's some skepticism, but I think, but in terms of some of the media attention we've gotten, it's actually been quite positive. But I think the implications are questionable, and that's where it's kind of difficult, because we're not suggesting surgery. We are suggesting that we need to think about other ways that we can communicate these things, other ways we can fit the prototype. Because when we are non-white, female, narrow face, and we're so far from that prototype, we have to think about the steps we can take to become more of the leader prototype. Yeah.
Have you thought about anything related to altering people's subconsciouses so that they understand that it seems to me that there might be some research out there which looks at how subconsciously you think that someone's a little bit more of a leader or something, and that's because you've seen other people do it. Is there any research on altering that behavior?
Yeah, I mean, I think we can think about, just other areas where this happens, where, within gender, it happens a lot. And the efforts that organizations have made. And in some ways, it's increased awareness. In some ways, it's about the leader taking a proactive role and making sure that they aren't just favoring the individuals who are like themselves or the individuals who fit this prototype, but make an active role in recruiting and coaching individuals who are not in that prototype. So I think it's awareness, and then it's about trying to get organizations and managers to take proactive roles to do a check with themselves. We should all be doing a double check, because we're all doing it, and it's not just facial structure, it's many factors. This is just one.
Have you done research across timelines, for example? Because in societies where we were not necessarily as intermingled, for example, maybe the research may be different.
Yeah.
Because I've read on research on documentaries in Egypt where facial features were completely different, and what we're looked at hiding was completely different than what we look at today.
Well, so, and I haven't done that, but I think it's very interesting, and it makes a lot of sense because our stereotypes of what a leader is are based on what's socially valued or culturally valued, and that can shift in time. So that would be very interesting, and there have been some studies that have been done on World War II leaders and in different countries, and some of them aren't quite the same effect. So that might be one way to kind of think about it. That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So you looked at one characteristic of facial structure, which is with height ratio. Are there other characteristics that is correlated with some leadership quality, leadership perception?
So there are. So the symmetry of your face is also something that's linked. That's actually linked to attractiveness. So that is one way we can break down attractiveness. It's about having a symmetrical face. I mean, there is this. I might have told some of you guys about it. There is this kind of study that came out of the Aston group in the UK, where actually asymmetry in terms of your earlobes was linked to emotional intelligence, which sounds, again, the stuff on the face of it, when you hear it, you're like, that is absolutely absurd. But then when you actually think about the processes that might lead this to be true, so basically people who have these asymmetrical faces in terms of earlobes end up being more emotionally intelligent. And so, but it's because this asymmetry makes people uncomfortable. They may be less likely to approach them. So this individual has to kind of compensate in some other way, becomes a very good listener, and so there are other factors as well.
Yeah, last one.
Okay.
It was interesting to me that you said that you can take certain steps to not be perceived like this. So my question is twofold. One, if you were one of these individuals knowing that you do not conform to the prototype, what are those steps that you can take? And secondly, if you're part of a group where you think some of these perceptions might be prevalent, then what can you do to diffuse some of this?
Mm-hmm. So I think a lot of what this research says, and sort of thin slice research says, is that those first few moments of an interaction with a team really matters a lot, right? And so I think that how you come into that first meeting, the dominance that you have, the assertiveness that you have really matters. And so I would say, look, this is one piece of this pie, but we also know that extroversion matters. And then, these other demographic characteristics. So I would think about, okay, if I'm not the most extroverted person, then how can I have the behavior in that moment? What kind of specific behaviors do I have to embody to go into that room? I'm this assertive person. I know what I'm doing. It's great to meet you guys. This is how I think we should do it. Right? So thinking about it and breaking it down into steps. If you see that happening, it's a little bit harder. Once the categorization processes have happened, it's harder to break them down. So I think your best strategy is thinking about it before you walk into the room for the first time. Yeah. Thank you so much. It's really, great to talk to you guys. If you guys have other questions, just please feel free to email me. Thank you.
Thanks. And the last presentation that we have today is Niraj is going to talk about his journey from investment banking to impact investing.
Thank you, Dave. Just so you know the title, it's from investment banking to impact investing, not the other way around. I had a few people email me after Dave sent out the email saying, is it from impact investing to investment banking, or just so you know. No, but as Margaret said, great initiative. We didn't have this last year. It's great to see so many people turn up here in the midst of recruitment as well, where this has got nothing to do with the career. This is really great to see so many people here. So yeah, as Dave said, I'm going to talk a little bit about investment banking to impact investing. And actually, it was quite funny. I was out at dinner last night with some LBS friends, and we were talking about the FT survey that just came out, and LBS got ranked number 3, and we were all saying, that's fantastic, LBS is right up there. And my friend said to me, if LBS was really serious about the rankings, they'll be trying to manage you out of LBS right now. And I said, why? He goes, because your salary pre-MBA to post-MBA is going to go down by a multiple of 3 or 4 or whatever it is. So, but that's not the focus of today. The focus is not rankings. It's not about money or any of this stuff. It's talking about investment banking to impact investing. And what I want to do is spend a little bit of time talking about the journey that I've gone through over the past 15 to 18 months as I've made this transition, and then provide a few reflections, which hopefully you find useful and you can take away as well. So to begin with, And just before I go into this, who's actually interested in going into impact investing or social impact, just so I know? Okay, so that's a pretty typical ratio, 3 out of... Okay, cool. So hopefully I'll try to make this as generic as possible so you can extract as many lessons out of it as you can to other career paths. So basically my journey started off in investment banking. It started off with Morgan Stanley, an internship, which I hated, Macquarie, where I got made redundant, and then Rothschild, where I spent the most of my time, about 3.5 years at Rothschild. So all in all, it was about 5 years in investment banking. And I sort of wanted to put up the next... Oh, what's happening here? I sort of wanted to put up the next slide talking about why I went into investment banking. And in a way, it was very similar to... It was in the penultimate year of my university in Australia. I was born and brought up in Australia. And it was very similar to the term now at LBS, where everyone was just thinking about internships. And I had absolutely no idea what I wanted to do. I didn't have any entrepreneurial zeal like Tony. I had no idea. I wasn't a particularly smart person. I just thought, I just need an internship. And I'm sure a lot of you sort of empathize with this. And I thought at the time, what am I looking for in an internship? And it was quite simple. I wanted something that paid well. I wanted something that had social value. And what that means is that I could tell my friends I'm a banker. And in 2007, that was a big deal. Now, not so much, but back in 2007, it was a huge thing to say to your friends, I'm working in investment banking, and everyone, there's huge social value attached to being a banker. So that's why, to be honest, that's why I really, really wanted to be an investment banker. There's nothing more to it than that. Also, I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life, so I thought investment banking will buy me more time until I figure out what I really want to do with my life. And then there's all these softer things like learning opportunity and strong work ethic. That's what I said in the interview, but that wasn't actually true. I wanted to go in there for the money, for the brand name, and because I didn't know what else to do with my life. That's why I went into banking in the first place. I'll get to that in a second. So what happened is that I stayed in banking for a long, long time. But I realized 4 or 5 years in that I wasn't motivated by the money so much anymore. Like that initial attraction was starting to wear off a little bit. The brand name actually deteriorated of investment banking. So, and I was ashamed of telling my friends that I said I work in finance. Before I used to say I work in investment banking, M&A. But now I said I work in finance. And they're like, is that investment banking? I'm like, no. It's something like related to that. But so the brand name, the branding of investment banking didn't really have that cachet to it. And then the big one for me was the career options. And about 4 or 5 years in, I thought, hang on. This is a point in time in which I was meant to figure it out. I said I'd give myself a couple of years because it would open up all these options. But I sort of panicked a little bit because I got to the next stage in investment banking and I was like, oh my gosh, I was meant to figure it out, but I still have zero idea what I want to do. Zero idea. So then I thought, I need something with even more options. So to be honest, that's why I chose an MBA at London Business School, because I thought, I don't have enough options. I'm in Australia. Australia's a small country. I need to get out there. I need to explore something with lots and lots of options. And what I wrote in my essays, and the process of writing the essays was great because, when you're writing the essays, they say, why do you want to do an MBA? And you're not going to say, I want to go into consulting and make hundreds of thousands of dollars. You're going to write something about how you want to change the world in a positive fashion. I think that's what I wrote. So that's what I wrote about. But in the process of writing that, I was like, hang on, maybe I'm interested in development. Maybe I'm interested in doing something positive for the world. And I wasn't really sure what. So honestly, and I'm not lying to you, I came to business school with a very unstructured, really had no idea where to go. I thought, I like finance, and I want to have finance in my life. But I like this whole development thing as well. And I'm going to come to business school and figure out a way to bring it all together. And then I remember the opening presentation from Richard Jolly. I don't know if he spoke at this year's orientation as well. And I don't know if he showed you this slide. But basically, when he showed me this slide, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm exactly expecting that miracle to occur via the MBA, because I actually have no idea to get from this course to the results. I didn't even know what the results were. I had a very, very vague, nebulous idea that I wanted to combine finance with development, and that was it. I was expecting career service to provide me with a bit more guidance on this, back when we had someone in career service related to social impact. And sorry, that was an underhand comment. Unnecessary. Unnecessary. But basically, I found that the school, the infrastructure of the school, perhaps wasn't the best set up to facilitate this career. So then I thought, okay, I'm just going to get out there in my very aggressive style, and then just apply to as many different firms as possible. And literally my emails and my cover letters were my name's Niraj, I'm an investment banker, I'm at London Business School, I want an internship at your company. Implicitly I was thinking, I'm awesome, I'm an investment banker, I'm an MBA student at LBS, who wouldn't give me an internship? But the truth was very, very different. And this is pretty much what happened. This is a small snapshot of the companies that I applied to. And I got rejected from every single one. This is not exactly motivational, I realize that, but there's about 45, 50 companies that I reached out to, and all of them rejected me. I'm not kidding you, every single one rejected me. Not a single one here, and there's a whole bunch of like 15, 20 others that just either didn't reply to my email, we went for coffee chats, and they didn't reply, or they didn't follow up. I had an interview and I didn't get it. I got to the final round, some of them didn't get it. And so that was me up until May last year. So that should make some of you feel a little bit better. Up until May last year, I had 0. Now, May last year, let's put that into context. By May last year, most of my class has not only figured out their first internship, they're stressing about their second internship. And I'm here wondering, how the hell am I going to get an internship? How can I hold my head? How can I go to Sundowners? And people are always talking about second internships and all that. What am I going to talk about? So I had to make stuff up. I was like, oh yeah, I'm in the final round for Leapfrog, and I'm interviewing with Big. I made stuff up. You have to. You have to. I can assure you, laugh now. Get to May and you don't have an internship, you'll be making stuff up. So I was making stuff up related to all these guys. Because I've got nothing. Okay. So then what happened? So I had coffee with a friend of mine from my class, and I was sulking. I was like, I've applied to all these companies and I'm in the process with a few, which I wasn't, but I just said I'm in the process with a few, but I really want to go into this area. Do you have any, what do you think? And she was working at a company called IntelliCap at the time. And I was like, who the hell's IntelliCap? What is that? And she goes, it's a great organization in India. You should think about applying there. If you want, I can put you in touch with them. And I was like, okay, I've got so many offers at the moment, so, no, but I thought, fine, I'll give it a go. I've never heard of them, but I'll give them a go. So, she put me in touch with them. They said, we don't have internships, but, this person is very highly regarded within the organization and she recommends you, so I'm happy to give you a go. And I thought, the other conversation that happens is, at Sundowners and various other places, how much are you getting paid in your internship? So this is the other thing that was in the back of my mind. And when she said to me, this is going to be an unpaid internship, they're the most painful words you could ever hear when you're talking about internships. But she said unpaid, and I was like, okay, so let me get this straight. I'm going to go to Mumbai during monsoon season when it's going to be raining every single day for an unpaid internship in a company that I've never heard of. But hey, what else have I got? So I'll do it. So I did it. So that's what happened. It was out of the blue, like I said. That's not meant to be a pun. It's just literally out of the blue. So IntelliCap, which I never heard of. It took me a while to get it, gosh. IntelliCap. Now, I never heard of them, but great organization. But next door to them, literally on the same floor, was this company called Avishkar, which I also had never heard of at the time. But Avishkar happened to be the biggest impact investor in India, full stop. I mean, they're the most established impact investing firm in India. They've made 40 investments, they've got 4 funds, they've exited 10, they're incredibly successful. And these guys are sitting on the same floor as me. I was having lunch with them, not knowing that they're from this amazing impact investing fund. So I sort of heard about what they were doing, and I said to them, what you're doing sounds really, really interesting. Can I help out? I've got a bit of spare time, which, again, I lied. I didn't have spare time, but I just told them I want to help out. I really, really like what you're doing. So they said, we're operating this fund. We're starting this frontier fund, which is looking in investing in Bangladesh and Pakistan and Sri Lanka and so forth. And we need some leads in there. And I was like, yeah, I'll go to LBS and I've got plenty of leads, which I didn't. but what happened, what ended up happening is that I literally just went on the directory and started typing in Bangladesh and Pakistan and Indonesia. I think I reached out to Aswin at some point, and various other countries. And I was like, who are the alumni that we've got in here? And then I started just contacting them out of the blue. And that was really useful for them. And they started social enterprise opportunities on the back of that. But then that was the pivotal moment. And that's when things started to change. And I'll go through the key takeaways in a second. But that IntelliCap and Avishkar were the turning points. Up until that point, I was just an investment banker from Australia who had no idea about social impact. But IntelliCap and Avishkar made it sound like I was legitimate. Then I went to San Francisco to Berkeley on exchange. And this organization called United Impact, who I had wanted to work for such a long time. They rejected me. They didn't even reply to my email before. And so this guy from United Impact came and spoke on campus. And he spoke about the fund that he was launching and all that. And I had been through so many rejections that I sort of had learned how to tweak my email a little bit. And I'm going to go through sort of in a couple of minutes as to how I sort of tweaked it a little bit. But the point is that United Impact got this impression that I was an expert in India, like I knew everything about India, I knew everything about education, and I knew everything about social impact. And I'm going to go through how I fooled them, no, as in how I pigeonhole myself, or how they pigeonhole me, but I'm going to go through how I did that. But they got this weird impression, even though I hadn't worked in India for a couple of months, even though I hadn't really worked in education. And that then laid the foundation for the next set of opportunities, which is now. And that's 3 offers from Immediate Network, 1 from Immediate, Microsystems Dell Foundation, and United Impact, which is a position that I never ever thought I'd be in, even up until 7 or 8 months ago. But I mean, serendipity and I think luck actually has a big part to play in it. But serendipity and just learning from my mistakes has proven to be incredibly useful in getting these opportunities. So what I want to do now is switch gears a little bit and talk about some of the key takeaways for me over the past 12 to 18 months. Sort of like things that I wish I'd known but I didn't, things that I've learned along the way. Some of this is obvious, some of this might be new to you. Some of this is relevant only to the impact space, some of it you can extrapolate. But the first point is knowing your story. So when I generally went for coffee chats and recruitment invitations with recruitment events, I would open up, and this is foolish, I know, but I would open up by saying, you know, I'm Neeraj, I'm Australian, I work in investment banking. I used to work in investment banking, and I'm an MBA student. Now, like I said, people will pigeonhole you straight away. Whether you like it or not, people will just pigeonhole you straight away. And if you don't pigeonhole yourself for them, then they'll pigeonhole you. So by saying that I'm a banker, I'm from Australia, and I'm an MBA student, I'm giving them pigeonholes, and they're like, oh, bankers don't know about social impact. Australians, they're in Australia, they don't know about developing countries. You know, what are they? He's got such a good life there. What does he know about emerging markets or whatever? I had given them a pigeonhole. So then the key point is understanding how do you want to be pigeonholed? How are you going to tell your story? And for those of you who have been on interviews and coffee chats and all that, they'll always start off by saying, tell me a little bit about yourself. And that is the first question where you can actually take charge and let them pigeonhole you. And so you control what you tell them so they can pigeonhole you. So my story changed a little bit, where I didn't start off by saying I'm a banker. I didn't start off by saying I'm Australian. I said that I first started getting interested. I've been interested in social impact for about 10 to 15 years. And the first experience that I had was in India back in 2005, where I went to a community development organisation. I enjoyed the experience. I was there for a few months. But I realised that in order to truly have an impact, I needed to have a firm set of business skills. And so I came back to Australia and I thought about the career path that would best give me that business training. And I found that to be investment banking. And I did that to the point where I felt comfortable with my set of business skills that I can now transfer to the development sector. But this is what I want to do. I want to combine business with development. Now, all that's true. All that is 100% true. But I was presenting myself as a banker from Australia. By opening up with social impact from India, I'm giving them a completely different set of boxes in which they can try to shove me into. And that, for me, I think gave me a little bit more credibility. The other thing is knowing your angle. So, like I said, I used to go to a lot of recruiters, a lot of companies, and say, I'm Neeraj, I'm an investment banker, I'm awesome, basically. But then I sort of thought, these guys, you need an angle. You need to understand exactly what they're looking for, and you need to do research. In terms, I mean, everyone's heard about this, but so the approach that I started taking with United Impact, coming back to United Impact, they had rejected me 6 months earlier. They didn't even reply to my email, and that's because my email literally was as I said. When I went back to them the second time, I said I worked with IntelliCap and Avishkar in India. I know the Indian social enterprise marketplace extremely well. I understand that you guys have just closed a fundraising. I know that you're looking to deploy capital in India. I've got a few opportunities that I wanted to float past you. And I wanted an opportunity to discuss this with you and share some of my learnings and insights from India. Now, if you go in and you offer them something, then it becomes a two-way transactional conversation. If it's just one way, me, give me an internship, that's a yes or no answer. But if you're offering something, and like I said, in terms of what you can offer, for me, I thought it was knowledge, skills, or network. even if you don't feel like you have a huge network, it's surprising how big, like in my view, LBS is the best possible network you could ever have, period. Better than any professional network, better than any network that you've got at home. It is the best network you can have. And even talking about the LBS network was for me incredibly powerful. Talking about the skills that I had was really powerful, not just investment banking, but breaking that down, financial modeling, due diligence, transaction execution, and applying that to early stage ventures, or whatever it is, and knowledge. I mean, you underestimate this, but the thing is that by just saying I'm an MBA student, I'm a banker, you're not actually specifying what skills you have. You need to spell it out, or I felt that I need to spell it out to these guys in terms of what are they looking for, and what tangible value will I bring to the table, even if I was wrong, even if they're not looking for that. If I said to, this happened, I said to a social investor that I know a lot about the education space, and I took a punt, and he goes, what makes you think that we're education investors, we're healthcare investors? I was like, oh, okay. He goes, what do you know about healthcare? I was like, nothing. I don't know anything about healthcare. So it's a punt, and you take that punt, and you get it wrong sometimes, but it shows, it's much more tangible for them. The final thing, and this is the most important thing for me, and this is, when I reflect upon the MBA and what's come out of the 15 to 18 months, I've learned a lot of great stuff from courses, but honestly, the most powerful lesson for me has been the time that I've actually spent thinking. And this is what Richard Jolly said again in his presentation. He said, how will you protect time to think? And that sort of stuck with me throughout the whole MBA. How will you protect time to think? So I've had a lot of time to think over the past, not so much in first year in general, but in second year in Berkeley I had a lot of time to think. And when you get rejected from so many different places, you start to think, is it me? Is it them? Like, where's the issue? So I wanted to sort of, talk through these two things. So the first is, you have to know your reason as to why you're doing it. Now, people talk about passion and, enthusiasm or having a goal. I don't know. I get really stressed out when people say, what are you passionate about? What's your goal? What are your strengths? Or, I have no idea. I have no idea what my passion is. I have no idea what my strengths are, and those questions really stress me out. But what I did do a lot of is I thought about, why did I go into investment banking? Let me analyse my past decisions. And let me understand why I actually went into investment banking in the first place. And I went through all those factors earlier. And for me, it came down to three factors: desire, ego, and fear. I went into investment banking for desire, ego, and fear. Desire for money, ego, i.e. the social value, and fear that if I don't take this, I won't get anything else. Fear that if I don't take a job that pays well and that has high social value, people won't regard me, people won't value me, people won't respect me. These are the fears that I had. I didn't have that ability to go out like Tony, for example, and be an entrepreneur. I had fear of failure. These are the things that governed my decisions. I couldn't deny it. It's not wrong, but it was just the truth. These were my delusory motivators. I then thought about, what are my ideal motivators? And to think about that, I thought, let's just go back to the goal. What's the ultimate goal? You guys are studying operations. Like, this comes in the end of operations as well, that book, The Goal. Like, the goal is to be happy. Like, honestly. Like, and I really thought about this. I'm like, maybe I'm overcomplicating this. Maybe the goal of my career is just to be happy. The goal of life is to be happy. It's not to have a high-flying, awesome career. It's to be happy. So then I thought, what are the situations in which I'm happy? What experiences? And I thought about stupid things. I thought, I'm happiest when, for example, like right now when I speak on Skype with my family at home. It's a big family, and when they're all there, it makes me happy. I'm happy when I've finished an exam and I don't have to worry, I haven't got the result yet. Those things make me happy. I'm happy when, no, seriously, I was happiest in the 5 years that I was working. I was happiest on the weekend when I was teaching a class. Those things just made me happy. I don't know why, but they just did. So I sort of thought, what experiences, what factors out of those things am I deriving happiness from? And for me, again, this is going to be different for every person. But for me, it came down to three things. I'm happiest when I'm connecting with people on a human level, not at a company level, not at a corporate level, when I'm actually connecting one-on-one with people. The second is when I'm serving, and that is when I'm doing something that's beyond myself. When I feel like I'm working for me or just money or my immediate pleasures or whatever, then that, to me, is not motivating. But when I know that I'm working for something bigger that's not related to me, that's actually where I feel accomplished and satisfied. And the third is learning. When I'm learning a new skill or new piece of knowledge or whatever. So these are the three things that really made me happy. So when I'm looking at an organization now, this is one thing that's really really prominent in terms of how I'm evaluating whether or not this is an organisation that I want to work for. Not, I just want a job. Is this an organisation that I want to work for? And this comes through very strongly when you're communicating with companies, because they'll want to know, especially in the impact space. For those of you interested in the impact space, there are so many conversations that I had, and this is what I like about it, because people are multidimensional. They're interested in your deeper motivations, and you communicate and you connect with them at the deeper level, and they want to know why. They want to fundamentally know why you're interested in this space. And often, like with MSD at Michael Sisson Dell Foundation, they said, "Why do you want to work here?" And it came back to connecting, serving, and learning. I said that I like the people that I've met. The mission is something that I connect to, and I've got an opportunity to learn about education and about investing, and this is what I want to do. The money's rubbish. My friends haven't heard of Michael Sisson Dell Foundation, and I'm going to be based in Texas, which is, gosh, I've never even been to Texas. But all those factors, I've tried to sort of say, that's desire, ego, fear. Let's put that aside for the moment. They're temporary. They will pass.